shorts and the headbands that go across their face. And usually these girls have little dream catchers hanging on their rearview mirrors, and I'm totally guilty of contributing to that culture. So today I'm going to tell you about those dream catchers. I'm going to tell you about the history of the dream catcher, what you'll need to make one, and how to make one. So before I teach you about the assembly, I'm going to teach you a little bit about the culture. And there are several stories concerning the origin of the dream catcher, but according to Sandra Loper and Broyce, there is the Lakota tribe has a story that is the most widely accepted. And the Lakota tribe had a leader who had a man named Iktomi, who was a great trickster and searcher of wisdom, appear to him in a vision. And Iktomi appeared to him as a spider. And this leader had what we would consider as a dream catcher today, but it didn't have any of the threading in the middle. But it had feathers and offerings hanging off of it. And Iktomi came to him and he began a web on his ring that had the offerings on it. He began to bestow a bunch of wisdom upon him, and he talked to him about the circle of life and how as humans we can go down, and there are good influences and bad influences, and depending on which influences we let affect us or which paths we go down and how our outcome is. So as Iktomi is spinning his web, he finally finishes, and he gets done, and it looks like this. And a hole. And today we're taught that the nightmares get caught up in this web, and that it looks like this so that there's a hole in the middle so that the good dreams can get through. But really what Iktomi meant was he wanted the Lakota leader to use this to guide his people, and he wanted this to be how they could go on the good path, the right path, and let the good influences influence them. And since then, according to Philip Jenkins, Americans really don't see this as a religious object, and that's how the Native Americans saw it. They took it with a lot of, they really invested in it, and Americans really see it as a symbol of freedom. However, Dr. Rocky Robbins has conducted a search, and he was a therapist, and he used dream catchers as a therapeutic method in American Indian delinquents, and in their treatment. In their treatment, he would have them make dream catchers along the way, and none of the patients who were making the dream catchers would quit their treatment before the dream catcher was finished. And I've noticed too that dream catchers can really relieve a lot of stress. So now we're going to get started on what you're going to need to make your dream catcher. First, you're going to need a ring, and I get these at Joann's. It's really the only place I can find them. They're really cheap, but you can order them online. You're going to need embroidery string, which can be found most anywhere, including Walmart and any store with a craft section. And feathers are the same way. You can get them anywhere. E6000 or pretty much any type of glue, and some beads. Preferably clear beads if you're not going to be putting them on decoratively. So next I'm going to teach you guys how to make the dream catcher. So you take your ring and you get some embroidery thread, and there's an indention right here. And usually I make my first knot right here. And when you begin to wrap, make sure that you're doing it very tightly and keeping it pushed back and pushed together, because it's going to cause a lot of problems for you later on if you don't keep it really tight. So when you finish, it should look like this, with a little loop around it at the top. And usually if you're making a smaller one, if you're making one to go in a car, I make the loop a lot larger than usual so that it can fit around the rearview mirror. And when you go to thread it, just make a knot like the first time. And to get a pattern like this, I pull a string and I put it wherever I want it to go, and I pull down from there. And then I take it and push it through so that it stays in that position. And I do that until I go all the way around it. And once I get all the way around and I begin to overlap, I start doing this process in between each one of these. And then if you want your hole in the center to be smaller, you can do this process where you wrap and pull it through on these strings. It'll pull it in and you'll have a smaller circle. So when you're finished with that, you're ready to add your beads and your feathers, and you should add some strings like this coming down. And usually I add either 3 or 5. It depends on the length, the diameter of the circle. And then I take my beads. You can take, if you're doing regular decorative beads and you're not attaching your feathers to them right then, just slide them on the string and double knot them, or however many knots you have to do so that it'll stay on there without falling off. But I take these clear beads and I push them onto the string, and when I get them on the string, I take my feather and stick it as close in between the thread and into the bead as I can. And sometimes you'll have to cut the stem of the feather to make it fit. But then I take a toothpick and stick it in my E6000 and stick it in between and get as much in there as I can because I really don't want my feathers to fall off. So upon completing my Dreamcatcher, I shall conclude my speech. Now that you know the history of the Dreamcatcher along with how and what you need to make it, all we like are some bell-bottom jeans and a couple of